All right, Nobile Mashala, thank you tonight. Let's zoom in then on this matter. Illegal mining activities and the dangers associated with it. We joined for that conversation by David van Wyk of Benchmarks Foundation, Ekurhuleni DA councillor Mabekenyane Thamahane, and the Association of Medical Councils of Africa President Dr. Kgosi Letlape, and the chairperson of the National Association of Artisanal Miners, Paps Lethoko. And you can be a part of the conversation tonight on 072-110-5584. Tweet us tonight at Newzroom 405. How you think this matter of illegal mining can be tackled and resolved. Dr. Letlape, good evening, and let me begin with you. People falling like flies having inhaled this particular gas. It's believed it's nitrate oxide. Is this consistent with how this gas would actually essentially act when it's inhaled?
Good evening, and just to correct, I'm a past president of the Association of Medical Councils of Africa.
Indeed, my apologies. Yes, indeed.
The way nitrous oxide works is that when it is released, it combines with oxygen. So nitrous oxide becomes nitrous dioxide. And through that manner, it depletes the environment of oxygen. And the people will then die from suffocation because the oxygen is taken up by the nitrous oxide. Similar to what happens with carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide, but 200 times more volatile than carbon monoxide. So in high concentrations, it's a very dangerous gas. In moderate concentrations, it is used in medicine. This is what dental practices will use to make patients comfortable for dental procedures. It is used in anesthetic procedures in theater. But in those circumstances, you ensure that the patient has an adequate oxygen supply. And it is used in the appropriate amounts with the safety precautions. So in the mining situation, it gets produced from blasts and from generators underneath. And because it sucks up the oxygen, it actually reduces the incidence of fires. But in those circumstances, those that work in that environment have to wear proper masks that give them proper respirators, as we call them, that will deliver oxygen in sufficient quantities to them.
Yeah.
This nitrous oxide is what is commonly known as the laughing gas.
The laughing gas, right. And does it matter how much time or duration of time you would have been exposed to it, or if it is coming in that degree of concentration, it's something that would affect you instantly?
Yeah, if you are in a confined environment and it comes out in large concentrations, it will suck up the oxygen in that environment very quickly, and you're going to suffocate within minutes.
And David, in illegal mining, what is this gas being used for?
Well, from the pictures I saw, they had large cylinders of these gases, and they used it to extract. They used blowtorches basically to extract gold from mercury. They wash the gold ore with mercury. The gold sticks to the mercury, and then to get the mercury from the gold, you have to use heat to extract the gold. And the mercury fumes itself is actually quite poisonous as well. It's a very crude method of extraction. It is a method that was used in the 19th century in the Johannesburg area quite a lot until the cyanide process came into play afterwards. So yes, in many parts of Johannesburg, we are going back to the 19th century. Johannesburg started off as an informal settlement in a squatter camp when gold was discovered, and the very early methods of extraction was exactly the same methods that the Zamazamas in informal settlements and so on along Main Reef Road use now. Yeah. And so I don't know where they get the cylinders of this gas from, but from the pictures I saw, there were quite a few of these cylinders of gas around. Yeah. When they operated. Last week, of course, a lot of people died in the Free State from helium, which occurs naturally underground. And in late May, 21 workers suffocated in the number 4 shaft in Virginia. from gas as well.
And in this instance, I mean, why would you say they are choosing this rather primitive method of extracting the gold and not using the more contemporary methods? Is it a cost thing, or is it just an availability of the chemicals?
The contemporary methods uses cyanide, which is very, very dangerous as well. But it is used in very large operations. You know, you have a process of washing the ore with cyanide, and it's in a very controlled environment, and you know it involves large quantities. The quantities that these guys are extracting, you know, the bags of ore that they carry up from underground and so on, doesn't allow for them to do it on an industrial scale. The cyanide process operates on an industrial scale. It doesn't operate at that small scale. But there are alternative methods of extracting this gold, and I think that we would do well to inform people of what those alternative methods are and to help them to utilize that. And I think the National Association of Artisanal Miners have attempted to run workshops to let people know what alternative methods of extracting gold from ore is.
Yeah.
The problem is that we've got very large industrial operations that have closed down because they're no longer profitable, and they've just been abandoned. And this then leaves a major problem for local government all over the country where there is gold on the reef and in the Free State and in Gauteng and so on, because gold is, mining is a national competency according to the Constitution, and local government has very little control over it. And really, we should be prosecuting companies that just abandon mines. The mines should not be abandoned. They should be re-engineered and they should be repurposed for other purposes so that employment can continue and maybe small and medium-scale mining can happen.
Yeah.
Or alternatively, those shafts can be used for other purposes.
Yeah.
That would make economic sense. You know, for example, they could be used for generating geothermal electricity, or they could be used for generating gravitational electricity.
Right.
There's a whole range of things that can be done with them instead of them just being rehabilitated, not being rehabilitated but abandoned. Yeah. So we really need to think through what we do with mines, because mining is not sustainable, it's not renewable, it's going to come to an end, but we've got to work out what happens after mining.
We'll talk about that in just a moment as well, David, when we come back. But perhaps I want to bring you in here. What could have led to the availability of this dangerous gas, and how would these illegal miners have gotten hold of this particular gas? And are there no controls in place as to who gets access to this gas? Perhaps please unmute for us.
Thank you, Tabo. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go for it.
Yes, thank you for having me on your show, and good evening to your listeners. Yes, this could have been avoided by simply regulating the sector. And there are different stages in artisanal gold processing. And the last stage that requires the usage of blow torches that are connected to these gas cylinders to burn what is called the amalgam. It is the filtered mixture of raw gold ore and mercury to make a round marble shape. They place it in a ceramic or a clay bowl, then they blow it with a high heat gas torch to burn that amalgam.
Yeah.
And in that process, they would gradually add other chemicals like borax to clear unwanted dirt, which can be acids or other heavy metals that are found in these large-scale mine dumps.
Yeah.
So the fumes that are released during the burning, and sometimes they would, most of the time, they use places like where they are staying, like in the shacks.
Yeah.
So they would burn when they burn this amalgam, the fumes that are toxic and dangerous are going out, and if inhaled, it can be very, very worse for the people who are inside the room without ventilation, or who are sleeping in that room, or even the neighboring, even the neighbors that are around.
So tell me, you're saying if the thing was better regulated, how would that have, for example, prevented something like a leak, which seems to have happened in this particular instance?
No, remember, if the sector is regulated, there would be safe processes and guidelines on how to recover this gold from these mine dust and these abandoned mines.
All right. Let me bring in Mr. Thamahane here. Mr. Thamahane, I mean, if we look at the conditions in which this particular incident happened, is not a condition that is really habitable. Even the commissioner there is saying it's not even accessible in some instances by the police and by the authorities. Could this particular incident have been avoided?
Yeah, no, thank you, Thabo, and good evening to your viewers at home. I think to answer your question is that when I've been working with this department, human settlement, where we do have the informal settlement that are congested and there is no movement. Although as the municipality we are trying to do the reblocking, but there is a huge amount of the informal settlement mushrooming. Having there at the scene this morning, I've seen for myself that there is no way that the law enforcement, like your policing, that can operate in that kind of environment. The informal settlement there is too congested and there is no proper movement. And then the police, that they can work, they are unable to work there because of those environment. And I was shocked, Thabo, when I've heard from the community that every time and again you will hear the shootings at night. So there is a lot of firearms in that informal settlement. And I think now the only thing to prevent is just to get the IGR, the interrelation government, that can come, more especially the mineral resources. They will recall the resident of Ekurhuleni. I was the MMC at first of the human settlement, and I went to Rhodes. And when I left there, after we were voted out, then I was given the instruction to the HOD that we need to write a letter to the mineral resources presidency so that they can come on board. The Ekurhuleni roads and the infrastructure is being damaged by these illegal miners. I can recall that in September last year, our MP, Ms. Hasina, did submit a motion to Parliament so that he was asking that there must be an ad hoc committee that will deal with the illegal miners. And I can assure you that, Thabo, these illegal miners, they are so dangerous, they are heavily armed. This is a syndicate that it needs to be addressed by the three spheres of government. The Ekurhuleni or the local government alone, they can't do anything to stop this. So I'm saying that to prevent it is very difficult. Hence the Premier, you could have hear that the Premier was also saying this morning that this is a disaster that needs to be addressed with the other spheres of government.
All right. So
that our metropolis, they can't do anything, and even the proper policing from the south is very difficult. It's not conducive for them to work there. And also, at night, I was even told that there is a group of people, the gangsters in that, at night there is this certain tribe of people that can walk freely, but the other tribes, they cannot walk. So there are people that are owning that place.
Yes.
Yeah.
Still with us, David van Wyk of Benchmarks Foundation, Ekurhuleni DA councillor, Mabekenyane Thamahane, the former Association of Medical Councils of Africa president, Dr. Kgosi Letlape, and the chairperson of the National Association of Artisanal Miners, Paps Lethoko. Your thoughts tonight, as you can see, they're coming through on WhatsApp, 072-110-5584, otherwise also on Twitter tonight, on this conversation that's got the nation talking. Dr. Letlape, I'm concerned because I'm also watching these people who are affected, who lost their loved ones. One of the ladies saying, my firstborn child, 19, and other relatives. So it seems people were indoors, and there was this gas that was leaking, and as they walked out, each one kept falling, each one kept falling, each one kept falling, which means the residents also are not aware maybe of the particular characteristics of this gas, how it smells like, and how it works. Is there a particular way in which you can identify this from far?
No, it's an odorless gas, so you're not going to smell anything. You're only going to get the effects when you are exposed to it in terms of the feeling of suffocation. And, in small doses, it will create euphoria. It can be used for relief of pain. You release endorphins that make you feel good. But remember that in this instance, from what I understand, they were not looking for the nitrous oxide. They were looking for the cylinders to help them with the way in which they would extract gold. It just so happened that they stole cylinders that contain nitrous oxide, right, which is a dangerous gas. Now, the key issue that all of us should not lose is the fact that in the new democracy, we have cheapened other lives by not having bylaws that create safe habitats and enforce them.
Yeah.
We allow people to live in squalor, and we call it informal settlements, where it becomes difficult. If you have an outbreak of an infection, it's difficult to contain. Sanitation is not sound. People are not safe. You cannot access the area. It's a failure of all three spheres of government, where we are not accommodating our people in proper habitats. We have normalized what we call informal settlements, which are habitats that are not fit for human consumption. So we should be looking back at the root causes of why it makes it difficult. But we also need to begin to ask society to take responsibility. If there's illegal activity, report it. Why can't there be a unit that does law enforcement around these issues? Because it looks like this is a part of broader social problems.
Right.
Remember the incident around illegal mining and the young women that were raped in Krugersdorp. Illegal mining and 31 miners that were found dead out there. These are human lives.
Yeah.
And they need to be taken seriously.
Right.
The challenge that we have about these mines that are at the end of their top dollar commercial life, they should then be formally turned into small businesses for artisanal miners with support from the state so that they are made safe.
Yeah.
But we also need to have safe neighborhoods. Just think about the fact that if you had proper housing that was properly ventilated, properly spaced, you wouldn't have such a high number of casualties. But because of what we glibly call informal settlements, we are not doing our duty.
That's the concern, isn't it? Is that this particular event is not just about the illegal mining. It is also about the socioeconomic conditions. It is also about the proper policing, I suppose, or law enforcement aspect of it, as much as it is also about the physical, if we like, turning around of these mines, or the physical shutting them down properly and making sure that people don't gain access to them.
But remember, fundamentally, if our people were housed in proper housing, even with an accident like this, If it's proper housing, you'd limit the casualties.
Right.
Because there wouldn't be crowding. There would be proper ventilation of where the people live. Now, in a shack, in winter, with no ventilation, and you have a gas of this nature released in that environment, and it spread to neighbors that are on top of each other, it becomes a disaster like we have right now.
So is there a way of I mean, I'm not saying this will happen again, but in some instances these things tend to repeat themselves. Is there a way in which, for example, gases like this are regulated? I'm sure in the health profession, doctors can't just go and buy a cylinder anyway. There are proper processes in how you get hold of them.
No, the gases are properly regulated. But if someone goes and steals gases from a retailer of this type of gases, that's criminality. That's an issue of law enforcement. That's an issue of a society where the values are gone. So there is proper control in terms of the gases. But once you have criminality, people don't even know what they're stealing. They don't even know the dangerous things that they are bringing into their own homes or their own businesses. So we need proper education. But this arises from an act of criminality, where people wanted cylinders and they didn't care what was in those cylinders. They didn't even want to know what was in those cylinders.
David, I heard the Council of Geosciences is engaged, I suppose, with the private sector in a process of closing down some of these ventilation shafts. I think they're saying there are about 1,200 of them or so, and 600 are still remaining that haven't been closed. But they are saying even if they were to close them, we would still have this question of illegal mining, because from their experience, what they have closed in some instances has been reopened again. Are we not closing them correctly? Is there another way in which we can close them at a more permanent kind of solution?
Well, I think that first and foremost we must note that every mine had housing stock around it. Every mine had workshops around it. Every mine had infrastructure, schools, hospitals, clinics, and other things that were associated with mining throughout the history of mining. But we allowed many of these towns to become, if you go to Durban-Roodepoort Deep Village, for example, it looks as if it's in the middle of the war in Ukraine. If you go to Sally's on the East Rand, it looks as if it was in the middle of the war with Ukraine. If we look at Western Holdings in Welkom, it looks the same way. In other words, when the mine was abandoned, the mining infrastructure was not handed over properly to the local government. The mining company simply walked away and squatters moved in and plundered what is there. Very often the people who did the plundering are former mine workers who were retrenched. They did not receive their pensions and they did not receive their UIF funds and things like that, and didn't go home and then became undocumented inside this country. There is a pension fund with billions of rands that is not paying out to former mine workers. And then there's a culture of people coming to South Africa to do mining from the Eastern Cape, from Lesotho, from Zimbabwe, from Mozambique, and so on. It's been happening over more than 100 years. But the mines are shutting down, and we should have expected this to happen. Now, we didn't plan for this situation to actually go the way it is going. Now, if you want to, you should not cap a mine, you should plug it. You should put concrete down for 25 meters in each shaft, apart from the plug that is there. Because at the moment, they just put a slab over the top, and it's very easy to break through that particular concrete slab and go down. But in any case, if the infrastructure around the mine was utilized and properly re-engineered and repurposed, then there wouldn't be people going into those shafts because there would be economic activity happening there. But if the place is just abandoned, then it is just going to be plundered.
Yeah.
Each of these mines also had electricity substations that would feed electricity back into the national grid. All those electricity substations have been plundered. They've been plundered because no one took care of them. No one cared when the mines closed down. No one paid attention when the mines closed down. We could have saved an awful lot of money on RDP houses in this country if we just took over the mining towns and the empty houses that were there and made those houses available for people in an orderly and controlled manner. But we didn't do that. We just allowed these mining towns.
Let's talk about that orderly and controlled manner. Who would pay for this? I mean, I know, for example, with the Mintech project that's been carried out with in conjunction with the Council for Geosciences, Treasury funds it. I mean, we know the limited resources that Treasury has in terms of closing down these mines. But who would fund this, David, and how much would it cost?
Well, first and foremost, there's a 50 billion rand mine closure fund that is sitting there. We're not sure that the money is still there, okay, which should be utilized. There is the pension funds that I've referred to already that are the pension funds of ex-mine workers. The big trade unions all have very big pension funds that could be invested in a project like this that would return profits on them and make those investment funds viable once the mines close down and the union membership becomes less and less. If that money is reinvested in the repurposing of mines for economic activities, it could generate a continuous income for the union pension funds and so on. The National Union of Mine Workers has a very healthy pension fund. Eskom has a very healthy pension fund. The NUMSA has a very healthy pension fund, very well managed. If we planned to utilize the infrastructure that was there in an orderly fashion, we could have found the funding inside South Africa to do that. If we turned the toxic mine dumps into solar farms, for example, we could have had communities living close to those mine dumps, generating income, selling it back into the national grid, and we wouldn't have the load shedding that we are having now. Our problem in this country is that we don't like planning. We just want things to happen any old way, chaotically, in a new liberal fashion, without thinking ahead for future generations.
Yeah. Paps, how would then the question of regulating and, I suppose, legalizing artisanal mining assist, for example, the question that David is raising of undocumented folks coming in and also wanting to take advantage of even that dispensation that would be put in place?
Thank you, Thabo. And remember, it won't be for the first time in the continent artisanal scale mining is legalized. Countries like Liberia, DRC, and even Zimbabwe, artisanal mining sector is well legalized and regulated, and it is supported by the government, and it is also contributing to the economy of those countries. Last time, the official from the Zimbabwe proudly mentioned that the country is being sustained by the monetary that is being they are getting from artisanal small-scale mining. Remember on that Al Jazeera documentary of gold mafia in Zimbabwe, where they admitted that they are using artisanal small-scale mining sector to develop the economy of Zimbabwe. So for that fact alone, it shows how much South African government is missing by not regulating this sector. We will be curbing the illicit flow, which is billions of rands out of our country. And we would be actually what was supposed to happen, because this gold mining in a large form, it is no longer feasible for the country's economy or for these large-scale mining companies. What was supposed to happen was a just transition to artisanal scale mining sector in a formal way, still regulated by the government, so that a little that is left can be channeled to contribute to the economy of these distressed mining communities around South Africa. And not only these people are recovering gold from underground, remember, they are also recovering from these mine dumps and mine residues that are left unrehabilitated by the large-scale mine companies with impunity. And this attracts the new informal settlements that are mushrooming near these unprotected former large-scale mine areas. They are now being occupied by the poor that are seeking job opportunities. Now they survive by working these residues and dumps of the large-scale mines to recover what is left. And people involved in these activities are both SA nationals and migrants. Some are economic refugees. Some are retrenched by the retrenched mine workers. The common denominator amongst them all is that all of them, they are poverty-stricken. And since there is an ACM policy that has been amended by the minister last year, March, the onus are on the Department of Mineral Resource and Energy to quickly implement the regulatory frameworks and guidelines on how to apply for artisanal mining permits to formalize these operations and to create safe jobs for these men and women who are contributing to, who are depending on this sector to contribute to South African mineral revenue and to the fiscal of the country.
Mr. Thamahane, let me bring here to what Dr. Letlape is raising, that this could have easily not happened had we taken care of the human settlement aspect of this particular matter. What needs to happen to the people of Angelo, that name again, informal settlement?
Yes, Thabo, thanks again. I think, let me start by saying that mineral resource and energy, forest and fisheries, Paps and Home Affairs need to come on board. They must sit down and they must have a roundtable discussion. And I can see that Minister Mantashe is trying now to talk to Lesotho and other neighboring countries. Coming to your question is that the situation that we're sitting on, yes, is a socio-economic that attracts other people to come, more especially in Gauteng. As we all know that this is the economic hub. Now, the issue is that there are a lot of foreign brothers and sisters that came to South Africa, undocumented and documented, looking for the job opportunities. So that is why I'm saying that these institutions need to sit together and work with a plan, because I can tell you that when I started as a councillor in 2011, I found the city that it was sitting with 119 registered informal settlement. Now we are at 165. And I think we are in more. And when I was at the scene this morning, you could find that there are a lot of foreign people in the Angelo informal settlement alone. So now that makes very difficult to deal with the situation. And also, Thabo, I think the DA has submitted 11,000 signatures of petitions to Parliament last year. So the Parliament dealt with this outcry, then we should not sit into this situation by now. I can say that we are a reactive government, not a responsive government. So I think now that narrative needs to change now, so that we cannot. It's very sad recently now, in next to Kgosi, there were 8 bodies that were wrapped and dumped there. You could find that maybe they died. Maybe they were died in a mining. Then they were just resurfaced so that the families can be elected. And like you've mentioned, the issue of 31 people that died in a mine shaft, in Velkom. So this is a dire situation.
Yeah, indeed.
I think really I'm calling that Home Affairs and all the stakeholders, they need to come on board so that they can address this issue. And this issue is not only affecting, it's also affecting Thabo, the infrastructure. Our roads in the city of Ekurhuleni, they are falling apart because of now they cannot take this, because even if you go to in Jamestown, you will find that there is a road that has been closed because of this illegal mining.
Right.
So I'm calling really that we need. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Let me take quick questions here on WhatsApp 072-110-5584. This one from Tekelo Ramatsetse saying, after the recent incident in Boksburg, what are the probabilities that it can happen again elsewhere tomorrow? And if it can, then it means what's being dealt with here are secondary problems. The primary would remain. Therefore, the risk is still there. David, want to take that a quick 30 seconds because I've got to wrap up.
Yeah, no, I think it can happen again and again, and we're trying to always do the same thing. We think it's a policing problem only. It's not a policing problem only, it's an economic problem. And we've got to deal with it accordingly. We've got to bring everybody around the table. We've got to say, how are we going to fix the situation? Otherwise, we're going to become like Katanga in the Congo.
Let me take one final WhatsApp message there on 072-110-5584. Katu saying, evening. Unfortunately, the only way to solve this ongoing problem is consequence management and heavy fines to be issued. And failing that, they have to find some form of economic usage of these mines or close them up. Final word, Dr. Letlape. Suppose also those WhatsApp messages in agreement that we need some form of economic intervention here.
Just a small suggestion that maybe we should consider not calling it illegal mining, but calling it unregulated mining.
Yeah.
So that it could begin to highlight the failure to regulate of government at all levels. And we should also call out the previous mining company for being irresponsible. There's a 50 billion rand fund that they pay to, that they pay to. They should have greater responsibility like that. And lastly, we can't be given a vote and be stripped of our human dignity. And we should take out the lexicon of illegal immigrants from what we do. These are human beings. They are fellow human beings. This is a human tragedy. And let's focus on empowering all human beings that are within our borders.
Gentlemen, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on, and thank you for your engagement tonight. That was David van Wyk of Benchmarks Foundation, Ekurhuleni DA councillor, Mabekenyane Thamahane, the former Association of Medical Council of Africa President, Dr. Kgosi Letlape, and chairperson of the National Association of Artisanal Miners, Paps Lethoko. What's making news tonight on In Focus when we continue next? Stay with us.